All right, that's enough. I don't want to get hit with a copyright strike. What's going on, y'all? It's Soapbox and coming at you for episode dose of What Was I Thinking? On today's edition, I'm going to be discussing a film that's very much near and dear to my heart, The Breakfast Club. Released on February 15th, 1985, making 2025 the 40th anniversary of its release. And man, let me tell you, The Breakfast Club is one of those movies that honestly transcends generations. It really does. It's one of those movies that I don't care whether you're 15, 25, 35, 45, 85. You can sit down and appreciate this film for one reason and one reason only. We were all young. We were all teenagers at one point. We were all filled up with that angst that a lot of teenagers have, and I'm sure it's a lot of parents out there that's going like, I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, The Breakfast Club stars Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, Anthony Michael Hall, Ali Sheedy, Molly Ringwald, the late great Paul Gleason, and it was directed by the incomparable, the one, the only John Hughes. And man, let me spend a little time on it before I get into the nuts and bolts of the film. Let me talk about John Hughes for a moment. Um, in my lifetime, I have never seen a director have his finger on the pulse of young minds, of teenagers, young adults, preteens, the way that John Hughes did. He had an innate ability to write to children, to teenagers that were just trying to find themselves, that felt like outcasts, that were just trying to find their way through this world. And he just had a way of writing material that resonated across cultures, races, generations. And I was always amazed, especially as I got older and I really kind of grew to appreciate his work more and more. I really took note of how he would write for young adults, teenagers, and he did it in such a way that felt authentic. It never felt like he was looking down on teenagers. He never felt like he was talking down to. He felt like it was dialogue back and forth. Like I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for not just the Breakfast Club, but let's run down this man's credentials. And I have no notes. This is just stuff that I know from memory. You know, he had Weird Science, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink. Uh, you got Home Alone. You got Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You got this has nothing to do with children, but Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's a classic. Definitely something you should watch every Thanksgiving. That was for you, Box. But back to why we're here today, The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club in particular really represents John Hughes at his best in terms of speaking to teenagers, young adults, you know, outcast, if you will. And this movie, I cannot say enough good things about it, man. I really can't. That's why it's literally one of my favorite things. I put over Goodfellas as my all-time favorite movie, but let me tell you, Breakfast Club is in a conversation. It's literally a one. It's literally a 1-1-8 situation when it comes to those two films. But with the Breakfast Club, what makes this movie in particular special to me is the fact that it's very much it very much speaks to the high school experience in a way that I can relate to, and I'm sure a lot of people that will see this video can relate to. You have Emilio Estevez, who is basically the jock, the star athlete. Molly Ringwald is the princess, the spoiled girl that pretty much gets whatever she wants, daddy's little girl. Anthony Michael Hall plays the nerdy character, the brain. Ali Sheedy plays the basket case, the weird kid, for lack of a better term, and Judd Nelson, who steals it. He plays the rebel, the criminal. And let me tell you something, man. At the casting, shout out to whoever was the casting director for this film. Kudos. Allow me to clap it up for you because everybody was everybody casted played their role so well to the point where you really felt like, especially during that time period, you're looking at these people like, yeah, I could see Judd Nelson being an asshole. And funny story, and doing a little bit of research, and this is what makes me love this movie so much more. So when Judd Nelson, as the legend goes, when Judd Nelson went in to audition for the role of John Bender, he essentially, when he went in, he was in Bender mode. He wasn't in, hi, my name is Judd Nelson. I'm here to audition for the role. No, he was in complete John Bender asshole move. And that was a ballsy choice on his part because, on the one hand, if you come in basically assholish, they could look at you like, yeah, security, get him out of here. But Judd, no, I mean, but he impressed the people that he needed to impress. Obviously, John Hughes and whoever handled the casting say, yeah, you're our John Bender, you're the guy. And God bless him, man, for taking those risks, because I really feel like, for the few months that I have been in acting, but honestly, this kind of like speaks to what I've always felt about acting. When you take on a role, right, you essentially have to become that character. You have to become one with that character. You can't just look at it. You can't just get a role, in my opinion, like, okay, Anthony, you're going to play the father of this girl, this troubled young girl, or you want to play a plumber, or you're going to play a lawyer, or you're going to play a doctor. You can't just get a role and say, okay, I'm going to go in and read for the role. I feel like you have to study the role, but you also have to, that character has to inhibit you. Think about, viewer out there, think about your favorite movie, and you tell me what it was that made you fall in love with that movie. Whether it's a Breakfast Club or a Goodfellas, for me, whatever your favorite movie is, whatever your Goodfellas is, whatever your Breakfast Club is, think about why you like that movie or why you like a specific character in that movie. When you watch The Breakfast Club, these characters, you could tell, man, like, and to be what's extra impressive about it, with the exception of Judd Nelson, who was about 25 playing like a teenager, which is that's another discussion for another time. All of these kids, they were literally kids. Like Anthony Michael Hall was, I feel like he was the baby of the group, so he might have been like maybe 14, 15, and I'm going to give him a special shine because it's a scene in this movie with him. He had a line of dialogue that was, whew, so stay tuned for that. I'll be getting to that soon. But the casting was perfect and everything about it. But to me, and you don't see this a lot. What drew me, what makes The Breakfast Club in particular a special movie for me, is that it's dialogue driven. It's dialogue driven. Nowadays, movies are basically a lot of action, shoot 'em up, bang, 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 bang. It's a lot going on. But The Breakfast Club forces you to pay attention. Like, you literally have to, it's about what, an hour and 37 minutes. You literally have to sit down and watch this movie beginning to end without stepping away. If you got to step away, you hit the pause button, because if you miss a line of dialogue, you'll literally be lost. You know what I mean? It's one of those movies where you have to be dialed in. So as I stated earlier, it came out February of 1985, February 15th, 1985 to be exact. The first time I saw it, I'll never forget it. I was at my grandparents' house. So I want to say it was between 96, 97, around that time frame. And first time I saw it, it was on TBS. And I want to say, the first thing that drew me to it was the fact that there's a lot of cursing in the movie. So when I'm watching it, it's a lot of like bleak that anybody that's of a certain age, you'll remember back in the day when you would watch a movie that had a lot of cussing in it on like a regular channel, like a Fox or a 6 ABC or something like that. It would always, the line of dialogue that they would use to replace the curse words was comical. You really think I give a darn, and all of that all of that goofy shit. But beyond that, what really drew me in was just like these characters were, so captivating, because for me, I always had an old soul. I'll be honest. Like I saw Goodfellas, and that's going to come up a lot throughout these shows. So get used to it. I just love talking about movies, specifically those two movies, Goodfellas and Breakfast Club, which I'm talking about now. But for some reason, I've always been like drawn to like dialogue heavy, dialogue driven films, and Breakfast Club was right up my alley. So when I first saw it, it was just like, man, just the dialogue. It felt like real people talking. That's number one. The writing, like I said, John Hughes wrote the script was fantastic. His direction was fantastic. But the thing about dialogue, right, is you can have the best script in the world, the greatest writing in the world. If you don't have the cast, if you don't have the people in place to pull off your words, it don't mean shit. It don't mean shit. But in this case, the casting was just perfect. Um, Now back to when I first saw it. Back to when I first saw it. I feel like what drew me in was the fact that it felt like real people. Now I wasn't in high school at the time, but there was still that, just like I said, they were roughly around my age, a few years older, but it felt like these characters were talking to me. I felt like I related to these characters. I felt like I knew these characters. And that to me is the greatest compliment you can give any type of script, whether it's a television show or a movie. When you can watch something and you can see yourself on the screen, if you can see yourself reacting to a situation like that or saying a line of dialogue like that, that's when you know you know what I mean? That's when you know something resonates. And I'm getting goosebumps literally just talking about it because I'm going back in my mind to when I first saw this film. And another thing that I liked about it was the uniqueness of it. Now, this movie is an hour and 37 minutes, right? It takes place over the course of one Saturday morning slash afternoon. It's about a group of five kids who don't really know each other. They know of each other, but they don't really know each other as in they've been friends, they dab each other up when they see. No, they don't know each other personally, but they know of each other. It's about five kids who are in Saturday detention for different reasons, and they had to spend an entire Saturday in detention thinking about what they've done and writing a paper explaining why they did what they did and how they'll never do it again, and basically kissing the ass of the asshole principal played by Paul Gleason, who, whew, God, man, he was brilliant, man. He was brilliant. If you ever get a chance, definitely look up his IMDb and look up his catalog. You won't be disappointed. He was a fantastic actor. Um, and before I go any further, I gotta ask this. Is there anybody out there that saw this movie in real time that can verify that Saturday detention was a thing? Because I've done detention before. So everybody out there at some point, I swear, has done detention at some point. But it was always for me weekday, Monday through Friday. I have never in my life gone to Saturday detention for anything. So I'm curious. Let me know in the comments if you were around during this time period, if you went to school 70s, 80s, even maybe in the 90s. Was Saturday detention a thing? Because I refuse to believe. That's the only part of the movie that kind of had me shaking my head like, I don't really believe this was a thing. This couldn't have been a thing. Like, what high school age child would openly decide to go to Saturday detention? I would have just ate the pink slip. Like I just don't. I don't understand. Like, somebody in the comments, please let me know. That's the only part of the movie 40 years later that has kind of like consumed me a little bit. Like, was Saturday detention really a thing? But anyway, when the movie opens up, you get the characters are really established right off the bat because of the five. You know, everybody has like their unique. Everybody has a unique entrance. Okay, so basically, Emilio Estevez, Andrew, he's the jock. He gets dropped off by his father, and his father is basically you automatically tell that they have like a very different type of relationship, meaning that Andrew works to please his father more so than himself. And he's basically like, look, bro, like, do you really like you fucked up? He's basically telling him, like, look, dude, you fucked up. Do you want to blow your ride for being stupid? Hey, I was young once. We all, you're an athlete. We goof off, we fuck around. But you fucked around to the point where you got the tension, and now you're going to potentially fuck up your scholarship situation. Is that what you want? Then get out, do what you got to do, and get back to business. That was basically their interaction. Then you got Molly Ringwald's character, Claire. Um, and her father is best way I can describe her father is he's kind of like detached. You get the vibe that he's detached, that he's basically like he's in her life, but not really. You know what I mean? He kind of like his idea of father daughter bonding is here's the credit card, go out, wild out, have fun with your friends. Right? That's their relationship. That's the vibe that I got from their kind of like interaction. Like she kind of comes across like a spoiled brat because she's sitting there like, gee, like you know what I mean? Like you can't get me out of this, dad. I mean, and Molly, Claire, I should have mentioned is Molly Ringwald. She's a number one, man. Like that woman can do no wrong for me. Like she's like, you know, she's gold. Um, then you have Anthony Michael Hall's character Brian. He's dropped off by his mom and his baby sister, and he's basically like I said, he's the nerdy character, and he's basically getting reamed out by his mom like never. You better never do what you did again. And that's another thing that I like about this opening scene where we don't find out what they did we don't really find out what each person is in detention for until halfway through the movie. And that's another little tidbit that I liked about the movie. Like that kind of like is what hooked me in when I initially saw it, because I feel like had they let the cat out of the bag in these opening moments, it kind of like would have took a lot of the punch out of what was to come later. So I love the fact that they kind of like left you on the hook, left you on the hook a little bit, making you kind of like stick around to find out why each child was in detention. So that was Brian's story. Then you have Ali Sheedy's character, the basket case, who basically is dropped off by her parents. And this scene was hilarious, bro. And apologies, like if anybody out there has ever experienced this as a child, I'm not trying to like re-traumatize you or anything like that, but Ali Sheedy's character, plays the basket case, the weird kid, basically. She's dropped off by her parents, right? So she gets out the car. And you know how, like, normally when you drop some, especially when you're a kid, you can relate, I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to this. When you drop off your kid, right, they'll get out the car. And normally you'll kind of like peek your head in the car. Hey, love you, pops, love you, mom, thanks for the ride, whatever. She leans over and literally the car just jets off. Like, it literally just jets off, like, so you could tell without a word being uttered, you could tell that her parents do not give a damn about her. They just dropped her off. And said, you know what? Yeah, you're the state's problem now. I just thought that was hilarious, bro. Like they literally just burned freaking rubber. Oh, and I'm sorry, Ali. Her character name was Allison. And then you have John Bender, played by Judd Nelson, my favorite character of the film. Um, he basically walks to school. He's the only one of the five that didn't get a ride. He was actually almost hit by Ali Sheedy's character. He was actually almost hit by them when they pulled up, but he just kept walking, just cool as a cucumber. So I'm not going to go through the movie frame by frame. I want to actually save that for when I have better production values and I can show clips and things of that nature. I just kind of wanted to establish a little bit of each character's personality, to kind of like give you an understanding of the film. But overall, when you meet each individual character, once again, man, it's all about relatability. Just off based off of what I described, right? I feel like when you watch the film, you will literally see either yourself as one of these characters or like somebody like one of these characters. And that's like the highest compliment, once again, that I can give any movie, that you can give any type of creation when it comes to TV show or movie, where you can actually see yourself on screen. You can relate to a character or a characteristic. So basically, after they're all dropped off, they basically head to detention and we meet the asshole principal. We meet the asshole principal, Richard Vernon, played by the late great Paul Gleason, and he basically tells them like, "Look, you're here for 8 hours. You're not going to dick around. Here's a pencil and paper, and write up a basically like a bullshit essay about why you're here and how you'll do better, blah blah blah." And this is where the film really picks up steam, because at first they basically come in like everybody's in their own world, their own space. Just leave me alone. Let me just rock out with this. Let me just rock these 8 hours out and just. But then over time they start to interact a little bit. And at first the interactions are very tense because, as I stated at the top, all five characters, they know what we're to assume that they know of each other, but they don't know each other because they each roll in different circles. They each roll in different cliques. So it's not like the jock is hanging out with the nerd, or the nerd has a shot in hell with the princess, or the princess won't be caught dead with the weird chick. You know what I mean? So like it's established that they know of each other. They just don't know each other like that, where they can actually say they know names and stuff like that. Because I'm pretty sure that these people didn't learn each other's names until they were forced to sit in detention together. But this is where the movie really picks up. Like I said, their interactions at first start off tense, and then over the course of the day, they start to bond. And the thing that bonds them, honestly, Ben, is a weed. And this is the part that I really want to discuss. Anybody that's familiar with that 70s show, right? They they would do the circle. Let's call it like the circle of weed, the weed circle. That's what I'll call it, for lack of a better term, where they do the blunt rotation, puff, puff, pass. So essentially, they had a moment like that in the film where they really kind of like got to know each other on a deep, deep level. And this is where I have to spotlight Anthony Michael Hall. Anthony Michael Hall, who at the time that this movie was filmed, I'm not talking about when it came out, I'm talking about when it was filmed, had to be every bit of 14, 15 years old, has a line of dialogue when they're in this circle where they're going over each how they ended up in detention, right? They're each going over like how we got here, what I did to get here, and all that type of stuff. He gets into his explanation, and I don't really want to spoil too much of it because there might be some younger viewers out there who never saw it who might be interested in it after I kind of like give out this mini review. But suffice to say, it's a very emotional and poignant scene where he basically admits that he had wanted to off himself, for lack of a better term. I'm trying to like stay in the guidelines of YouTube, and I don't want to say certain words, but suffice to say, during this course of dialogue, he basically implied that his mental state had gotten to a point to where he considered offing himself. And to be that young, and I'm not talking about the character, I'm talking about Anthony Michael Hall now. To be that young and to have that much poise and that much depth to be able to pull off this dialogue at that young of an age. Like, I just recently got into acting as a grown man. This was for all intents and purposes, a child that was out here like killing it, killing it. Michael Hall is so underrated as a child actor, as an adult actor. He Everything that I've ever seen this guy in, he has killed it every single time. And he was one of John Hughes' favorites because he popped up in a lot of his films. Weird Science, 16 Candles. He had some memorable parts in that, and The Breakfast Club here. And he was just one of those guys, man, that like he really had a way of he always played like nerdy type characters, but he had a way of giving them an emotional depth that you wanted to root for. That like he even when he was being an like he was like let's admittedly his character in 16 Candles was a bit of an asshole, but he was a lovable asshole. Like even though he could have those tendencies, and I think that's probably like a little more of the old school that I feel like that's a little more the real Anthony Michael Hall kind of like injected some of himself into the role. But even when he would display those asshole tendencies, you still rooted for him. You still rooted for him. Oh, I would be remiss if I didn't. I should have mentioned another John Hughes classic, National Lampoon's Vacation, which is what introduced us to Anthony Michael Hall. He was in that. That's another classic that y'all need to look into. But overall thoughts on this film is just that it's a must watch, man. It really is. Like I said, down the line, I'm going to do more of a proper review where I kind of go through it scene by scene and hopefully can play like a few clips and things of that nature. But this episode was more about giving you like an overview of why I like the film. And to just summarize my thoughts, I like the film because it resonates. It continues to resonate. Now, when you watch it through 2025 eyes, yes, a lot of the slang dialogue that was used is dated. A lot of how people dress is dated. But the overarching theme of the film, which is teenage angst, being a teenager and trying to navigate the world, trying to find your place, trying to find out where you fit in, trying to find out who you're going to gravitate towards. Those are universal. Those aspects are universal. I don't care whether you were born in the 1900s, the 2000s, or and beyond. I don't care. That doesn't matter. Anybody from any era can watch The Breakfast Club and instantly enjoy it first and foremost just as a film, as a work of art. But you can enjoy it and relate to it on just like a deeper level. Because I promise you, anybody, that's your challenge, that's your homework. Go and seek out The Breakfast Club, watch it, come back to the comment section and tell me that I was right. That it was a good film, you related to it, you found something that you liked about it. And that's basically like I wanted to give some quickie thoughts on The Breakfast Club. And I'm holding back a little bit because, like I said, I do want to do like a longer form video on it at a different date with, like I said, better production values, show you some clips of that nature, and just make it really overall give you like a more professional vibe to it because it's such a dialogue heavy film. There's really not a lot to break down without like some type of scenes and clips and things of that nature to show you. So that'll be coming soon at a later date. For this, I just wanted to kind of give you like an overview of the film and what it was about and just the relatability of it. The relatability of it. Before I check out on The Breakfast Club, I do also want to summarize how it all ended. By the end of the film, everybody pretty much left as friends. They came in as strangers, not wanting anything to do with each other, and they left as friends. And this is I'm kind of split on this. Now, and I'm gonna say this up top. Hollywood, leave The Breakfast Club alone. I need to put this out there. Leave The Breakfast Club alone. Everything does not need a goddamn remake. I will burn Hollywood to the ground if you mess with The Breakfast Club. Leave it be, especially since, God bless him, John Hughes passed away in 2009. He's not even allowed to be a consultant. He's not even allowed to, try to guide you folks into the right direction. So please, Please leave it alone. We don't need a remake. We don't need to reimagine. The original is just fine. But if I had the ability to go back in time, I don't know if I would mind a sequel, because by the end of the film, like I said, they left the school, they left the tension pretty much with a better understanding of each other, and you kind of wonder what happened Monday. Like when they got back in school and everything was back to normal, did everything go back to normal where everybody went off into their own individual directions, or did they actually come together as friends and maybe hang out? That's the only thing that kind of like when the movie ended, I always wondered about. And I'm assuming like John Hughes maybe never had a. I did. There were kind of rumors that he kind of was maybe interested in doing like a sequel of sorts to the Breakfast Club, and unfortunately, that never it wasn't meant to be. But I was always curious about how things ended up with them. I really wish that John Hughes, while he was still here, and especially with how successful the original Breakfast Club was, it made a lot of money and it was like a sleeper hit. I wish that he would have considered maybe somewhere around like 87, 88, maybe do like a sequel, a follow-up, like call it Breakfast Club, What Happened Monday, or something along those lines. Because when you watch the film, by the end, I promise you, you'll be asking yourself that same question, like, I wonder what happened Monday. But it's all a moot point. Hollywood, I'm serious. Do not touch the Breakfast Club. Y'all done already destroyed a lot of my childhood memories with some of these remakes. Don't add the Breakfast Club to the list, please. Let that movie be. So, with that said, those are my quickie thoughts on one of my favorite things, my favorite films, The Breakfast Club. Do yourself a favor and check it out. Before I get out of here, I do want to send out condolences to the family of Kevin Scandato, aka Kevin Castle. If you're a wrestling fan, you know who that is. Kevin Castle is an OG in the wrestling podcast space. He, along with Don Tony, are, for lack of a better term, the grandfathers of what we now know today as wrestling podcasts. They essentially, in my opinion, created the format. They're both New York guys. Don Tony, trying to get the timeline right. I want to say he started doing hotlines like around 96, 97 time frame. And then as the years went on, that transitioned into internet radio in the early 2000s. And that's where he met Kevin Castle. So basically, he did a internet radio show called The Minority Report, which is, as it sounds, it was a menagerie of everybody. You had Don Tony, you had Joey 924, you had Black Moses, and Kevin Castle. And this is kind of like where I relate to Kevin Castle. He started out originally as a caller. He was just a guy that would just call in, kind of like when I started with THT. I was just a caller with Shaheen and Box, and it got to a point where I called in so much that I became a part of the show, and that's essentially what happened with Kevin Castle. So as the Minority Report went on, you started to see the chemistry that Don Tony and Kevin Castle had. So what happened was they essentially cut the fat, and the Minority Report around, I want to say 2000, late 2005 into 2006, became the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show. And all to the races they went. And Don Tony and Kevin Castle show was pretty much an institution on Monday nights, man. It was an institution on Monday nights for years and years, literal decades. Right after Raw, 11:05, if you were a wrestling fan, you were locked into Don Tony and Kevin Castle. And they really changed the landscapes. And with Kevin Castle, if you've never heard the guy's voice, man, he had like the perfect voice for podcasting, radio. And what I personally enjoyed about Kevin Castle was he had a very dry, sarcastic sense of humor, but he also had like a level-headed take on pro wrestling. You know, anybody that follows wrestling these days, especially in 2025, is pretty much a cesspool of opinions on social media. People taking sides, people taking up arms for billionaires that don't need your support. It's the wild, wild west. But Kevin Castle was always one of the very few voices of reason in a polluted landscape of opinions. Um, Now, my first interact, how I found Don Tony and Kevin Castle was through a YouTube channel called TV Tracks. Now, I'm sure some of you out there, when I say TV Tracks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was the greatest thing ever. To give you, like, guys, a quick little understanding of what TV Tracks was, it was essentially a YouTube channel that curated a bunch of the better known, well known people that were talking about wrestling online on the internet. That's how I found Don Tony, Kevin Castle. That's how I found Solid Monster. That's how I want to say that's how I found Greg Morgan, aka Good Mike Work. I'm not sure how I found him, so don't quote me on this. But I want to say it was through TV Tracks because I didn't know who he was at the time, and it was literally, it might have been right around the time that he actually started doing like just random videos, because he came on the scene in 2010. I want to say that TV Tracks, I discovered TV Tracks around maybe that time frame, 2010, 2011, because I've been listening to Solid Monster and DTKC for years. At least, I want to say, at least since maybe like 2011, 2012. So somewhere around that time frame. But that's where I found, like, and instantaneously, I was drawn into Don Tony, the outrageousness of Don Tony, but the level-headedness of Kevin Castle. And Kevin Castle, man, he was an encyclopedia of wrestling history. He was an encyclopedia because I mean, there aren't too many people out there nowadays that go back as far as him with his knowledge of wrestling history. He could take you back to the early 80s, because I want to say he probably was a fan since like the late 70s, early 80s. And he's one of those guys, man, that could instantaneously take you back to that time period. And he was such a gifted storyteller that when he would talk about going to shows at the Garden, or talking about, like, different territories that he watched throughout the years, he was such a vivid storyteller that when you listen to him, you can literally create a mental picture in your mind and automatically see everything he was talking about. He was a fantastic storyteller, and you mix that in with the sarcastic sense of humor, and you have instant success when it comes to wrestling podcasting. I know more about Al Perez because of Kevin Castle. For those that, this is where my wrestling nerddom comes in. Al Perez he was mainly a territory guy in terms of where he achieved his biggest success. But he did pop up in WCW and WWF as a enhancement talent towards the end of the 80s into the 90s. And he was one of those guys that people really predicted that people at the time had high hopes for. He basically would have been like the Eddie Guerrero of his generation before Eddie Guerrero, but politics and just a lot of different variables got in the way, and he never really achieved that level of success or fame before he ended up basically quietly retiring from the business. But just overall, man, Kevin Castle was a good dude. He loved animals. He loved animals, man. Like, if you followed him on social media, listen to him on the show, he was always rescuing the cat, feeding the cat. Like, he was an animal person. And they say you could tell a lot about a person by how they treat animals. And if that's any indicator, Kevin Scondato, the man, was a good dude. Just condolences to the entire Scondato family. He was one of 5 brothers. And I'm actually pretty good friends with one of his brothers, John Draper. Shout out to you, John, man. Like, you, the family, everybody's in my prayers. If you are familiar with John Draper, he's done stuff on The Soup. I've actually had the privilege of meeting John in person a handful of times, and he always personally treated me like gold. And when you talk to John, it's like, damn, I wish I could have talked to Kevin, because, like I said, he was a podcaster, but he was a podcaster that made an impact. If you go on X, if you go on social media, you'll see countless tributes to Kevin Castle, and they're well earned, they're well deserved. He was a good dude in terms of what he did in the wrestling podcasting space, and he'll be deeply, deeply missed. For more information on the life and times of Kevin Scondato, aka Kevin Castle, I would recommend checking out Spitball Media, my friends over at Spitball Media, which Kevin's brother John Draper is a part of. He, along with Shaheen and Bisho O'Brien, did a fantastic tribute stream to Kevin Castle the other day that I highly recommend checking out. John actually has done a few podcasting. He's actually made a few podcast appearances talking about his brother Kevin, and he kind of gets into. And it's not my place to do this, but actually got into more personal, intimate details about the life and times of Kevin. I'm just strictly speaking on Kevin from a podcast fan point of view. If you want more information, check out Spitball Media on YouTube. Also, they have a podcast. Subscribe to their Patreon. $5 a month, you get access to their unedited catalog. And I'm sure they talked about Kevin in great detail on the Patreon as well as on the free channel on YouTube. So check that out for more information on the life and times of Kevin Castle. Thank you, sir. RIP. Condolences to the family and friends of Kevin Scondato, aka Kevin Castle. And with that, I'm out of here. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. And make sure to check me out. Hit that bell icon. Hit like, subscribe if you like the content that I'm giving to you. My name is Soapbox Ant. And before I get out of here, don't wear the brand, be the brand. I also have a podcast, The Weekly Detour, that I do with Teddy Two Cents. We're everywhere. So check that out. Spotify, Google, TuneIn, iHeart. Just go in your Google machine and type in The Weekly Detour and we'll pop right up. So that's another thing that I got percolating. My creativity knows no bounds. I do audio. You can get me an audio. You can get a visual. You can't beat it. So until next time, I'm Soapbox Ant. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon so you're notified when I go live every single time. And if you're feeling generous, you want to donate to the channel, Cash App is SmartMark434. That's SmartMark, all one word, 434. I'm Ant, and I'll see you next time. Peace.